said that the economy was great and everything was wonderful. And a week later, the stock market crashed and we entered the Great Depression. President Kennedy said that we weren't conducting any type of, operations or anything against Cuba. The next day, an American pilot was shot down over Cuba. President Johnson lied to us about the Gulf of Tonkin incident, and that was highly classified. It was only recently that top secret documents were released that confirmed what a lot of people knew, and that was that the Gulf of Tonkin incident was a lie, and it was just used to justify going to war in Vietnam. And how many thousands of people died over that war? If somebody at the time had informed people about that, that would have been a violation of their top secret clearance, and they'd be in a prison cell today, or maybe sharing a room in Russia with Edward Snowden. We've also had Ronald Reagan, who said we did not trade arms for hostages. Bill Clinton, I did not have sex with that woman. And for those who say that, a politician's sex life shouldn't matter, I agree to a point. But the problem is, if President Clinton was willing to lie to his own cabinet, to the entire country about his sexual relationships that he did not want made public, what else would he have done if one of our enemies found out about that? And maybe they did, who knows? But how much pressure could those people put on him to do things? If you're trying to hide something like that, and look at all of our politicians out there who may have some of these skeletons in their closet. And so lies are lies. When you look at President Bush, I will not
read my lips. No new taxes.
Read my lips, no new taxes. We also heard from his son about weapons of mass destruction.
Those weapons of mass destruction got to be somewhere.
President Obama, you can keep your insurance. You can keep your doctor. Noam Chomsky once said that the reason that a lot of governments classify information isn't necessarily to keep it from their enemies, who in many cases already know, but it's to keep it from their own people. General Smedley Butler, the only Marine to be awarded the Medal of Honor twice, wrote a book, War is a Racket. And I know you're familiar with it, Alex. But after World War I, Smedley Butler did some research and found that war created over 21,000 billionaires and millionaires during a time when the frontline troops were being paid $30 a month. And he said that the key to ending war would be simple: take the profit out of it. He said if you conscripted labor, capital, anything that's needed for the war effort, and paid CEOs, politicians, generals, admirals, everybody on down the same thing that the private fighting the war is being paid, announce that 30 days ahead of time, and he said there'll be no war. And it's curious, I'd be curious to see how long the war on terrorism would last if CEOs of some of these defense contractors, private security companies were making $15,000 or $1,500 a month instead of 8-figure salaries in some cases. And that's another concern, is the privatization of the military. What we're seeing is that in the past, a lot of these government contractors in the military-industrial complex provided materials and equipment to fight our wars. Huge profiteering was taking place. But nowadays, these companies are providing materials to fight the wars, but people themselves. A lot of our support troops are slowly being replaced by private contractors, people from other countries, even third world countries in some cases. And so these folks are actually out there on the battlefield. If you look at what happened in Fallujah, the whole thing that sparked that, if it wasn't for 4 Blackwater employees getting killed and dragged through the streets of Fallujah, nobody would have ever even heard of that city. And some of the questions to ask are, what were they doing there? Why weren't they adequately prepared? Even though the CEO of the company may have been making 8 figures a year, what was the amount of that money that was trickling down to be able for these people to actually do their job safely? And I think the message that was being sent to the Iraqi people is, hey, those people need to get the same respect our military does. Don't mess with them or we're going to mess back. How many Marines were killed in that first Battle of Fallujah before the president pulled them out and then went back in and fought a second battle over the same ground, only to lose the entire country now to the very people we said we were going there to fight, who weren't even there when we got there. I think if General Butler were alive today, he'd conclude that government is a racket. If you look at what's destroying this country, it's all the corruption. The reason we've got a $17 trillion debt is because of all the money that's been looted from our government, from the taxpayer, all the promises that were made to my parents' generation for Social Security and so on. You know, that money's been raided. That money's gone. You know, now that it's time to start paying those bills and to start paying those people what they were promised, that money's not there.
And if there's one thing that has unified Democrats and Republicans and everybody in between, it's that we all hated the bank bailout.
I think the question that people need to ask themselves is how much power and authority do you really want your leaders to have? And when the President of the United States claims the authority to be able to kill an American citizen anywhere in the world, anytime, just by declaring them a terrorist without any due process, that should concern people. And I think it concerns a lot of people, but apparently not enough to do anything about it. When the most powerful person in the Senate calls an American citizen a terrorist, a domestic terrorist, like he did with Cliven Bundy, over a dispute about grazing fees, an issue that's going on in courts, an issue that involves money and so on, and declares him a terrorist, you know, what message is he saying? I mean, he's basically telling the President of the United States, hey, here's one over here. Does that mean that the President is now going to, you know, send in a drone and kill Cliven Bundy or some other people? And so I think that's something that people need to pay attention to. If you think it's okay for the President of the United States to be able to kill you and you can sleep at night with that, then, hey, that's fine. But think about the crop of politicians here that are running for president. Think about the politicians in the opposite political party that you might belong to. You know, did you want George W. Bush to have the authority to kill you? Did you want President Bill Clinton to have the power to kill you? Do you want President Obama to have the power to kill you? Do you want any of these candidates that are running for president to have the power to kill you? And that's something that everybody needs to take a real sobering look at. Do you really want your president to have the authority to kill you? Because that's what it comes down to. When you're saying, well, yeah, he can go kill a terrorist. Well, I'm not a terrorist, so I don't have anything to worry about. And it's just like the people say, well, if you don't have anything to hide, you shouldn't care or have anything to worry about that the NSA is monitoring every aspect of your life. And it's not that you have anything to hide. It's not that you're doing anything wrong. But the problem is, you know, people get the wrong message out of 1984. It's really about finding people's fears, finding people's weaknesses so they can be exploited. You know, maybe you're very close to a certain person or a certain relative. Maybe you didn't do anything wrong, but maybe they did, and now they can use that to get to you. And so we shouldn't be under this level of surveillance. And it's total hypocrisy to try and tell the American people that we need this level of surveillance on our entire population because the threat is so significant, and yet at the same time, the very agency, the Department of Homeland Security, that's trying to put the fear into everybody, that's trying to terrorize the American people into believing that there's a terrorist around every corner and that your local police department needs to have an armored military vehicle in order to deal with it, when at the same time we've got people walking across our borders unchecked, not only unchecked, but assisted by our own government and being shipped all over the country. This is a biological attack. We've got diseases. We've got people who are literally walking biological weapons being sent all around the country. And if that's not impeachable offenses, if this isn't even treason, then I'm not sure what is. You know, the average Marine corporal has more integrity, I think, than all of Washington. And they swore an oath to defend the Constitution, not the country, not the government, not even their families, but the Constitution, the ideas that are in there. If you're one of those people who always says to a veteran, hey, thank you for your service, if you want to thank a veteran, get a copy of the Constitution, read it. Help defend it here at home. Demand that your politicians read the Constitution and start to live by it and vote by it. They deserve better. I think maybe that's why the Homeland Security sees veterans as a threat, because they know what's in the Constitution. When I was a battalion commander, the very first thing I did was issue everybody in my battalion a copy of the Constitution, a pocket version, and told them to carry it with them all the time.
I want to thank Col Pete Martino for doing what he's doing, standing up, being a man, fighting here in the Republic, here in the homeland against the takeover we see unfolding. And I want to talk to all you out there. Remember that whether you are a Marine Corps colonel with a Bronze Star, whether you're a school teacher, whether you're an auto mechanic, black, white, old, young, Hispanic, I don't care. Muslim, Christian, Jew, agnostic. Liberty beats in the breast of every man and woman out there who's not evil. And most of us are not evil inherently. We just are ignorant. And we've been afraid to stand up and be leaders. We're going to lose everything, ladies and gentlemen, if we don't stand up and speak out now and get back to the basic American values that made this country so great and made our nation the model of the world. So, Colonel, I salute you and your wife for coming to Austin to talk to us. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you, Alex. Pleasure. Anytime.
All right, folks. Again, never forget, if you're watching or listening to this transmission, you are the resistance.